to Out of State DMing. I'm your host, Lux Blackheart, and this is my co host.
Iskion.
Today we're going to be centering the topic around halflings in D&D. Uh, we don't necessarily have a lot of halflings to go over, thankfully, because there's only 7 halflings, and that's only if you count in the fact that 3 of them are culturally different than the standard halfling. But halflings in normal context are probably one of the best rogues you're going to find because everyone assumes you're automatically being one the moment you say you're a halfling.
And when you hear halfling, think hobbit. They're about the same size.
Well, yeah, for those who don't know what a halfling is, that a hobbit is because they're about 3 feet tall and weigh between 30 and 35 pounds, so they're child sized.
And easy to toss around.
That's one of the reasons why they're called halflings, is because they're usually half a man. Even though they do technically have the pointed ears like elves, but they generally can, with a little bit of makeup and contouring. Don't let them know about the contouring. They can look like children if they really wanted to. Human children, but still, nonetheless. They're mostly nomadic, opportunistic when it comes to finding themselves anywhere. Uh, most societies don't particularly trust halflings, not because like, oh my god, you, it's because the response of they're thieves, they're pickpockets, they're going to rob you as you walk by. So a lot of
Some of them don't even realize that they're doing it when they do it.
uh, just I'm gonna correct that. Um, I'll get back to that thing you just said in a moment.
Kleptomania that they have.
That's kinders. Yeah, that's remember that is kinders. Halflings technically don't have it. That's a specific type of halfling known as a kinder. And for those out there that you want to get argumentative, yes, kinders are halflings. They just have their own tomfoolery about them. There is several different types of halflings, most of which are generally similar to them in both society wise, stature wise, with very little differences. The core 3 halflings are of course, the half-foots. It's the, well, not half-foots, why I think half-foots. I watched The Rings of Power last night. You can tell.
Yes, you got dumber.
um, eh. No, sorry, they're Lightfoots. That's mainly to reference the fact that they can be quite sneaky. Then you have the tall fellow halflings, which get up to 4 feet tall instead of 3 feet tall. So they're like they're just taller halflings. Then you have the dark halflings. No, despite the name, they are not evil version. They're not the evil versions of halflings. They are underdark halflings, as in they do stuff underground, but culturally they're drastically similar to normal halflings. Uh, with the exception of the tallest they normally get is around 2.5 feet. So technically, you can say they're shorter than the rest. Which is, no matter how you put it, it's like they're like 3 feet's the tallest point for Lightfoots, 4 for tall fellow, 2.5 for the deep halflings. Which I don't know if you got got the trend. A lot of the sub races for the core races that have to do with the Underdark usually always have deep involved in their name. Deep gnomes. The deep elves are also known as dark elves, also known as drow. Deep dwarves, which is with previous episode we went over multiple types. Halflings are no different. They have them. Uh, Besides height and being a little bit more stockier, some of the differences for the deep gnomes is they get dark vision. They get the +2 for appraisal and craft with stone and metal, just like dwarves, and they have stone cunning ability, just like dwarves. Uh, that they get a bonus to bluff checks and listen checks of a +4, so they're better at lying and hearing things
Are
than
you talking
normal
about gnomes or halflings?
deep gnomes. Deep gnomes,
Yeah.
deep halflings.
Right. You were you
Yeah.
you had said gnomes.
Well, well, I also said dwarves and elves too.
Yes, but you were talking about the gnomes having all of this when we're supposed to be talking about halflings. Rings of Power
Well,
must
I
have
brought up
really gotten
most.
me.
Well, no, if you're actually listening, I brought up more than just the deep gnomes, and then I went straight into what the deep halflings were getting.
Uh-huh.
You're not paying attention because they also get
You,
captivating
oh,
song, which is a complete fabrication because they don't get captivating song. Testing your knowledge.
mm, man, see, man.
Let's be stupid today. Wait, that's not hard.
Rings of Power does
Um,
that.
Stupid hobbits. Uh, Back on track. Um, like I
Sure.
said, the deep halflings. Like I said, they get the stone cunning and the +2 on praise one craft checks with metal and stone. So they're kind of like a halfling version of a dwarf, but shorter. The tall fellows, besides being a foot taller, uh, they get an additional bonus to search and spot, not just listen that normal that the Lightfoot get. Not to mention the fact that by they get the DM gets to make a check for secret or concealed doors if a tall fellow comes within 5 feet of it. So they sprinkled in a little bit of elf with that one. The base stuff though is a bonus to dex, hit to strength, small size, which I everyone always says is the biggest burden when it's not. The only downside is the -4 to grappling, and uh, the your lifting cap is 3/4 that of a medium-sized creature, so you can't carry as much.
Oh
But
no,
the
you're
yeah,
tiny. You shouldn't be
oh
carrying
no,
as much.
yeah. Mm.
You're tiny.
The catch 22 is small sized weapons technically weigh half as much as their medium sized counterparts, and it's the same for armor. They weigh less. So when anyone's like, but it's ways to it's like your clothes, your weapons, and your armor technically weigh less. The price doesn't change. They refuse to change that, but it's a wee bit lighter because it's
Not as
less
much
material.
damage.
Well, it's
Weapons aren't as much.
not just damage wise. It's less material that goes into it. So it's like one of the jokes is their long swords is our short sword. Excuse me. They don't run as fast as people because they move at 20, so they're slow. Not sluggish, they're just their little legs can only run so fast. Bonus on jump, climb, and move silently checks. +1 on all saving throws. Bonus +2 against fear effects, which does stack with the +1 they get on all saving throws. +1 to hit with ranged weapon. Yeah, with ranged weapons that are considered throwing and slings. So it's like you don't really want to go for like a crossbow or a bow. You want to go for anything you can throw or a sling. Normal bonus to listen checks. Favorite class is rogue. The picture they use pretty much shows a halfling uh, doing a stealth check by a helmet and a sword, and it just makes them look. That picture does them no justice on their height because it makes it look even smaller than they should. Even though yeah, that's probably a long sword or a bastard sword, but that's a big freaking helmet.
And well, they are small creatures.
Yeah,
I mean, you could probably hide behind that if you were 2.5 feet tall too.
yeah, it's like tiny. Just pick them up and throw them.
Yes.
Uh, some of the other halflings that can be found is if you go over to Forgotten Realms, there's 3 different types of halflings. That can be listed. Because they do have their own Lightfoot. The only difference is because it's a different realm, is they gave them a little bit more history. So instead of just generic random stuff, it goes, oh, here's their homeland that they left all this time ago because the Ghost Wars. You have the Ghost Wise, which are trying to atone because it's technically their kin that started that war, but they're no longer in their homeland, and they're
Was the war over?
extreme anti-social halflings. Then you have the Strongheart, which stayed. They stayed
Yeah, but what
because
was this ghost war over?
that it didn't really say other than the feral Ghostwise is what they're referred to as. Wanted all the fade, they wanted all the smoke, and they lost. Hence why there's Ghostwise that are now trying to atone, because it doesn't actually specifically say if they're the good ones that left or
Does atonement actually entail?
trying to make amends for the fact that their kindred started a war that screwed up their homeland a lot. Which the thing
Okay,
I find weird, it didn't
but
actually say what they actually did besides start a big freaking war that they lost.
but how if they're being isolationists, how are they atoning?
I have no idea. It's let's make a let's give a race strong motivations to be the good guys, but then make them borderline xenophobic. I say
Yeah,
borderline because they're not actually xenophobic. They'll put up with other races, they'll do stuff with other races, but given the choice to just not, they'll go, do I have to interact with it or can I just bug out? I have to interact with it. It's less of like, oh, you just run into one in these woods. It's more like, oh, I technically, in a way, accidentally set them up to have to deal with me. Because they're trying to protect their woods while also living with it. They're also extremely obsessive over family and clan. Like, if you insult their family or the clan, it's a fight. They're throwing hands because like, nope, they're not gonna let that slide. So it's like any yo mama jokes, you need to just not because it's like you say one yo mama jokes, it's pulling out a dagger and it's stabbing you with it. It's like that's a good way to not wake up in the morning. Uh,
Well, the only way that it's going to be able that you're not going to be waking up in the morning is if they get you while you're sleeping, because there's no way they're going to do much when they're a quarter of your size and standing.
will you say that? But the only detriment they take is their -2 to strength. That's counteracted by the fact that they get a +1 to attack bonus for being small sized and a +1 to their AC for being small sized. So they're harder to hit than the average person and actually have a counterbalance if they're trying to stab you. The other counterbalance is they do get a bonus to dexterity, which does make them slightly harder to hit, which means not counting armor or a good dex score, they have on average a 12 AC. Again, not counting armor or an actual really good dex. That's just the average dexterity of one. Like the standard block they give for a pre-made halfling has them having a AC of 16, which you know how much trouble a 15 can cause. Even though they
Yes.
don't necessarily have like overabundance of hit points, because again, it's a level one statistics. Uh, they give them a long sword, which is not as powerful as yours. It's only a die six, and they're not strength or hit, so it's only the die six. But they're getting a +3 to hit. And again, that's with an 11 strength. They're getting a +3 to hit. If they use their crossbow, the light crossbow they gave them, which I think it's like underplaying a class feature, well not class feature, but a racial feature. They still get a +3 to hit with that with a die six of damage, and they're by itself, it's considered half a CR, which coming from like certain small things, that's not necessarily super high, but it's also not the lowest it could have been. Now, I would have had it focused on something it could use as a melee and or thrown weapon, and or give it a sling, because the sling it would have had a excuse me, 4 to hit with the sling instead of the +3, or if it was throwing something, same difference. Um, the stat block they gave it wasn't the best. Uh, because not counting racial adjustments, they put a 13 into strength, 10 into dex, 12 into con, 10 into intelligence, 9 into wisdom, 8 into charisma, and then the strength and dex pretty much just swapped. And the thing you have to remember, uh, that they're not necessarily playing into there, because they didn't just go, here's a rogue, they went, here's a halfling warrior. Uh, because of their small stature, they get a +4 on all hide checks. If you can count their dex modifier, that means they, on average, not counting armor, they have a +5 to sneak up on you. Talk all the garbage you want. If you can't see it sneaking up on you, it's not gonna care. It also gets a +2 to move silently checks, which turns to a +3 with its dex, which means it's definitely sneaking up on you, and with good bonuses straight out the window. So
Well, yeah,
if
and that's only what they put down, not the fact that you can possibly get an 18,
well,
which turns into a 20, which
well,
that's a stabby stab.
like I said, they gave it two average scores, two above average scores, and two below average scores. So that's a not the apps. That's not like a pinnacle halfling. That's a, you can easily say, an average halfling, because the two below averages counteract the two above averages, making it a straight across the board average build. Like solely average. So it's not a heroic halfling. It's not a player halfling. Because player halflings are most likely definitely going to have better statistics than that. Which means
Yeah.
if you play a halfling, your strength, well, yeah, all your stats are most likely going to be a lot higher. Even if you're like, my strength's gonna take it, my strength taking a hit, so it's gonna suffer. But then if you take the feat weapon focus and you focus on the light weapon, your strength only comes into damage, not to hit, because you're using your dex to hit. So they make excellent dex fighters. If you go rogue like they like to be, you can simply sneak up on the person and get that +6 to sneak attack. So right there, you're like, I don't care how high your AC is, I'm catching you on flat foot and I'm doing extra damage. So if you take into account that a player, or at least a not so averaged out halfling, would most likely definitely have a better dex than what it has, means it's going to be not so easy to hit. Yeah, so if they would have built the generic halfling a little bit better, I'm not even talking about leaps and bounds, just a little bit better, it would have been just a lot. Like instead of going with the long sword, I would have gone with a light weapon like a short sword or a rapier. Why? Because you can take a weapon finesse with it, and voila, you're getting a better to hit. I also would have used either javelins and or the sling to get the better arranged. Because despite what people think, high damage weapons are great, but they suck if you cannot hit. Because the person that has the better chance of hitting is going to out damage the person who just has a high damage weapon. So if you're sitting there going, "Yay, I have a die 8," uh, I die 8. Just if you had the same just generic fill as like, yeah, I have a die 8 with a +1, but if I can't hit you, what's the point of all that damage? Like for instance, without saying names in our current Sunday campaign, there's several characters that have decent weapons. They just can't hit a broadside of a barn because they have either no bonus or a very tiny bonus. So yeah, they have a die 8 weapon, they have a die 6 weapon, but they have no damage adjustments because they don't have that strength to help mitigate it. They don't have anything to actually help them get that huge bonus in, or that high to hit in. So even though they have decent weapons, it doesn't matter if they can't hit.
Yeah, I've never liked not being able to hit.
Yeah. So it's like, even though I love the fact that when it comes to melee, two of my players, Wink Me Just Nudge, have a high melee to hit chance because like
Yes.
they're like, yeah, we're just gonna melee tank this. We got really good on our stats and stuff, so we're just going to like show up, flex, and stuff's gonna want to die because it's either
We're just that
they
tough.
die or they suffer way too much damage because we're like, mm. So like
And then they grapple and eat you whole.
what that's because it was a sea serpent,
I know.
and
But that's what happens.
it doesn't. It's like, you're gonna. It's like surprise, mother effers. Uh, but like even that, did the party defeat it? Yes. Did it take a while? Yes.
Yes.
And the only thing I can say that played into its favor was the fact that the primary people that had the easiest time hitting it were the first two to be knocked unconscious. Simply because it
That's wonderful.
it's not a mentally deficient creature. Uh its surprise attack, it went for target A and started messing that person up. and then it went for target B, which is the person who's actually hurting it, before the drawn out miss, occasionally hit, miss from the other two. Uh, but yeah, it's like it's where the hits first damage come in, and you only have to worry about your damage if the target has some sort of damage soaker, like a DR or hardness, and or a healing factor like fast healing or regeneration. So when it comes to halflings, with their automatic bonus to hit from their size, helps counteract act their melee deficiency with their -2 to their strength. It counterbalances it. Then if they're using thrown weapons and or slings, it that doesn't hurt because it's using their dex, which they get a bonus. They get another bonus on it. So if you play to the strengths, even though slings are a low damage weapon, starting out with an automatic +2 to it, because unless you are playing Iron Man and your dex happens to be absolute garbage because you rolled so low it puts it negative. The odds of you having above a 10 are high. So at minimum, with that sling, you got a +2 to hit. That's not counting whatever class you go into. That's not counting how high your dexterity actually is. That's just a flat +2. They're not counting armor or anything because your size, you're sitting there with a 12 AC. Which, if you go with like the studded leather and the light shield that they give these halfling, you have a 16, which you can you know just how much problem a 15 can cause a low level party.
Yes, 16 at low level is almost impossible to hit.
Well, it did. Yeah, you have to either have ridiculously high modifiers, fires, or just really lucky to constantly constantly hit that number off the get go. Because like even though in our current game you have a really high to hit with all of your melee weapons, hitting a 16 is still going to be problematic because if we take the average result, which is at 10.5 on a d20, you're getting 15.5, which is always ran down to 15. So right there, the
Miss.
average amount of the average die roll you're missing, which means you don't have a 50% hit chance. You have a does it excuse me, you have a 45% chance to hit, which is still high, but that means 55% of all your die rolls are misses. Because you have to get an 11 or higher. You you can't really afford that. I mean, afford to take that opponent lightly. Because it doesn't matter if that gives it only 5 hit points. You
You
have to
can't
hit
hit,
it.
you can't hit, you're
Yeah,
not going
yeah,
to do any damage.
yeah. 0 damage does not help you because it's 0 damage. So therefore, you have to try to get that to hit up. Now, the bonus with melee weapons is the whole like the higher your strength, the higher the hit, the higher your damage. But it doesn't help you when you're fighting an opponent that automatically is getting bonuses to its AC simply because it exists. Uh, and that's where some of the benefits of being a halfling come from is the fact that your small size may seem like a huge handicap. It's not. It's a big benefit because you're harder to hit. You're also a lot stealthier. And it doesn't
And
really
if
matter.
you're in a boat, you don't have to do any rowing because you can't read because that just
You're
doesn't work.
you're too small to do any of the rowing. So it's like it's your turn to row. It's like, I'm gonna not. If they go, why? Um, Let me stand up. Oh, am I still technically not tall enough to standing up row this boat because it's a human
Uh,
boat, not a halfling boat?
Have you looked at me lately?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, the only halfling that has actual statistical differences, like real statistical differences from normal halflings, is the kinder. Because they have a lot of the same stuff, but a lot more stuff. It's one of
Anybody
the,
that's read
the
anybody that's read War of the Lance, Dragonlance will know that Tasselhoff Burrfoot is the typical Kinder.
yeah, they're the ones that actually are kleptomaniacs. They're the ones that like, where did I get this sack of gold? Oh, you must have dropped it. I was keeping it safe for you. Because they happen to just go, wait, why is there a sack of gold in my hand?
They have no sense of ownership.
There
In
is
a
that
Kinder
too.
society, yeah, in a Kinder society, if you walk into a house and grab something from the residence that you don't live at, obviously you needed it, and
They
nobody's going
didn't.
to care because somebody's going to take something from your residence and it's just going to wind up somewhere else.
Well, I mean, other races are going to care.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah. It says
if it's a Kinder,
in Kinder Society, if it stays in your home for a couple of weeks, it's
it's
an
a
ant
family
family
heirloom.
heirloom. That's why that's still there. Otherwise, Kinders are constantly like their hands are constantly in someone else's purse. They're randomly taking stuff off your hands. You wake up in the morning, go to put your boots on, and go, "Where's my boots?" And then you see the Kinder walking around with boots several sizes too big. Why? Because I was walking by your tent and just snagged your boots simply because your boots were right there. Doesn't matter if like, oh, I stepped in horse crap, so I put them outside my tent to make sure I didn't sneak up inside my tent. It doesn't care. There's a good chance you now have clean boots, but it's like, oh, hey, boots. You can get your stuff back from them. It's just they get in a lot of trouble because they're like, what do you mean I stole it? This signet ring must have been on the ground or something. Is it yours? They're like, take it if it's yours.
They
What's
really
the
don't know that they
malfunction?
took something.
So it's really easy for them to be ostracized because like, no, you're not stealing any of my stuff. You can stand outside my store, like nowhere near my store.
And they will be very hurt that you're telling them that they're not allowed in your store because of the fact that Kinder are known to be thieves because they don't see themselves as thieves.
Yeah, so it's a sad thing.
So that you have a sad Kinder.
Yeah. Um, when it comes to statistical stuff, they keep the bonus to dexterity and the minus to strength, but they also take a -2 to wisdom. Does they lack the ability to think things through or consider the consequences of their actions? They're still small size. They're faster than the other halflings because they go at a 30, not a 20. So they move 50% faster, which is a perk. Uh, they treat uh, any of the kinder weapons as simple weapons. There's one races that have race specific weapons, so everyone else has to take the feat to use it. They get it for free. Um, they still keep the +1 to all saving throws, +2 on spot checks, not which is different from the normal plus two to listen other ones get. They get a plus two on open locks and sleight of hands. And they're treated as being trained with those skills even if they have zero ranks in them, which for some people may not sound like a big thing, but it's one of those if you don't have ranks in a skill that's considered a trained only skill, you cannot use it. Kinders go, oh, I don't have any ranks in it, I can still do it. It's because you're a kinder. They have a lack of focus, which they get a -4 on concentration checks. They don't necessarily lack any magical talent, but their general lack of focus discourages them from pursuing careers in magic. So you could still play a magic user, but they're not prone to magic users because their lack of focus. It's kind of like having ADHD. It's a constant ooh shiny moment because they can't really focus on one thing. They have a taunt. Does they have uncanny insight into the motivations and characteristics of other races? They can use this insight to unleash a verbal barrage of sarcasm, insults, and crude comments that cause the targeted victims to lose their temper. They get a +4 on their bluff checks to use taunt any of the to use bluff to taunt enemies. So they're really good at just pissing people off. Uh, they have the fearlessness, which may sound similar to the fearless feature that some other races have, but that's fearless. This is fearlessness. They are legitly immune to all forms of fear, magical or otherwise. So you can't scare them.
Oh, yeah. And a beholder shows up. The kinder will go, let's go make friends with it. Everybody else is like, no, let's run away. But why? It might want to be friends.
Mm. Technically, because they're not stupid, they're not going to go, let's go be friends. They're going to go, huh, that can kill us. Does confusing the lack of fear with lack of common sense not the same thing. Are they gonna go want to make friends with
Okay,
the beholder?
bad
No.
example.
No. Are they gonna want to go like taunt it and insult it and make fun of it? Most likely, yeah. Are they gonna go, oh, we can win this? Because
No.
they do lack the ability to think things through, but they're not like it's a scary floating eye with tentacles with eyes with a big mouthful of teeth. Let's go be its friend. They're that that degree of lack of common sense. It's like now you're insulting the Kinder's lack of thinking things through. Because there's a difference between they don't always think things through or consider the consequences. With it's like I definitely should know better, but I'm gonna go hug it because I can. It's like the Sagittarius Sentinel, which is a big cactus monster. It's like I'm gonna go hug it. It's like you're just because you're a kinder doesn't mean you go hug random things. You know for a fact that if you hug it, you're going to impale yourself. So when it comes to degrees of not thinking things through, that's a obvious you know the response. You know what's gonna happen. Versus the whole if I taunt it, is it gonna actually cry, giving us a chance to win? Or is it going to disintegrate me with one of its stalks?
Yeah, they're not going to think that through.
They're not gonna think that through. They're just gonna go, don't worry, I got this. Listen here, you one-eyed cretin.
But
So
they
they're
will
gonna
go into the dark place and that nobody else wants to go to because there might be something around the corner that's useful.
Yeah, there might be something useful. There, it might be fun. It's just you don't know until you go do it.
It's going to
Uh,
take god level dread for a kinder to feel uncomfortable in an area and say we need to leave because I don't like this.
yeah, because like if a kinder goes, yeah, we need to bounce. Everyone should already be leaving because, like I said, kids kinders. There's a lack of not thinking about the consequences of their actions and their tenacity to just be absolutely fearless puts them in positions where other people are like picking them up, going, "We're going this way," while they're like, "But that way." But if it's the one
We could
go
cross the
grabbing you by
bridge.
your pant legs and going, we should probably go this way, you know something's wrong. Because again, they're immune to magical or otherwise senses of fear. So it's more like if his common sense is going off that he needs to run, we need to run.
If a kinder's saying let's leave because I don't feel good here, why aren't you already leaving?
Yeah.
Why have you not run away yet?
Yeah, it's like one of those you're exploring a cavern. The kinder stops, looks over, sees a big pair of red eyes, and a slight glow of something into that's the head of a red dragon. It's like I may be fearless, but I'm not retarded. We need to leave. If you're like something just scared the Mr. Fearless, we're leaving. Something's making him sweat bullets. Let's go. It looks off in the distance and it sees a Tarask, the top of a Tarask head. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna get petrified from its fear effects, but you guys are. So let's leave. Entire party going, what? It. You don't need to know. We're just leaving.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing as overwhelming god level dread making a kinder uncomfortable. That's just a kinder going, I
That is
actually have some
uncomfortable.
sort of awareness.
If you look at a Tarask and it doesn't immediately make you like shat yourself a wee bit, it's like you immune to its frightful presence is one thing. Going, I just dropped a brick because I know what it's gonna do to me if it knows I'm here. Not the same thing. And that's another thing a lot of players confuse fear effects with your own innate ability for self preservation. They confuse them and intertwine them and think they're the same exact thing. Because you can be immune to fear, like a kindred does, look at something and immediately know, I don't want to die and leave. Doesn't necessarily mean you're being affected by a fear effect. It just means you're not dumb enough to go get yourself killed. Because if you know you can take care of the problem, they're going to go, we can handle this. Boom. It's like a bullet or a bullet. One of the most difficult creatures you can deal with, unless it decides to not be underground. Does it have any natural fear effects other than people knowing it's there? No. Knowing it's there is enough to make you wet your pants. Because it can and will pop up from underneath you, grab your horse while you're on it, and rip your horse under the ground. Will it burst from the ground, trying to knock everyone over while also trying to curb stomp someone? Yes. Looking at it and going, I'm fearless, therefore I have to fight it. Or why would I run? I don't show fear. I'm fearless. Not the same as I can't beat that. I'm leaving. It's what you use as slight examples. Uh, with the game we're running, if given the option to immediately flee the area and not fight the sea serpent, Would you have stayed to fight the sea serpent?
No.
The only reason you stayed was because it currently had another party member in its mouth. You didn't have a choice. Could I easily say your character was terrified? Yes.
Yes.
Get your character go. I'm probably going to not survive this encounter. I could say the same thing for everyone else's characters. Did I once ask you to make a will saving throw?
No.
Did I enforce it has a 5-4 presence?
No.
No, it's because it doesn't have any magical or supernatural abilities to make you crap yourself, other than the fact that it's a massive sea-going monster, and you're stuck on a boat that it can easily catch up with. So there's a lot of people out there that outright confuse such features as like the fearlessness or even their normal race or the lesser version of it, which is just fearless. But all that does is give you +2 against fear effects and related effects, which means like 5 for presence, you get a bonus against that. Any fear spell, you get a bonus against that. Uh, Technically, if someone's using intimidate to make you afraid of them, you get a +2 to that because they're using a fear effect on you. They confuse that with I'm absolutely immune to fear. I cannot be affected by fear because I have something that says this, which that's why Kinders have the better version of it. But that's not the same thing as common sense kicking in and your ability to go, I don't want to die today. So a lot of players just run into combat. They don't try to get away from the monster or anything. It's like it's like if you were in a forest. If you had a choice of going through a forest, has canopy creepers in it. If you had a choice, would you
No.
go in those? No. A kinder,
Let's stay away.
a kinder would go. No. You're like, but you're fearless. It's like I know what's gonna happen if I run across its vines. I'm gonna get eaten. They know what's gonna happen. Can you go, oh, you're afraid? Go ahead all I want. It's their survival instinct kicking in. Does its knowledge of what's going to happen to you and the most likely outcome versus I'm immune to fear, so therefore that doesn't matter. It's like, it does matter. It greatly matters. Because it's one of those things that if a creature or if an entity period does not have anything that immediately triggers a fear effect, it doesn't matter if you have it or not because it's not triggering an actual fear effect because that's when it says you have immunities or bonuses against a particular thing, that's just if something triggers a die roll. That's if something gives you a condition. It's like if you have it's like in some games some creatures have additional bonuses against being critted, like the Krogan. If they have an automatic, if someone crits them, there's a chance that it automatically stops. There's magical things against it. Constructs and undead don't care about being crit. Those things only matter if if the topic in sub there's a chainsaw going off nearby and it's someone ruining my train of thought.
I can't hear it, so you're good.
Uh, you can't hear it. I can hear it. Uh, but no, it's one of those. If something doesn't have the effect in question to trigger your defensive thing, it doesn't matter that you have it or not if it's not being used, and confusing it with natural survival instincts can and will mess you up. It's like if you're playing a vampire, do fear effects work on you?
No.
If a lich shows up, do you stay and fight it, or fly to try to flee from it?
Considering the Lich will be able to put me under its control and I'm a free thinking individual, I will be leaving. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
is that you using common sense sprinkled in with your own survival instinct, or are you somehow magically uh now being under the effects of a fear effect?
There's no fear.
Exactly. It's you going, I know better. I'm leaving. So you have to either A, hope it doesn't realize you're there, or focuses on someone else, which is most likely going to be the person going, I'm not afraid of it. I'm a vampire. And it's like, huh, you are? Hi, minion. And you're like, huh? Well, you're not. You're already running. That person who decided to say to go, I'm going to fight it. It's like, yeah, um, it's looking
Have
at
fun with
you
that.
and it's smiling its crooked smile. Why? Because you're now it. It's like, I'm immune to that. It's like going into different things as a vampire. It's like you're immune to mind control effects, you're immune to domination effects, but then a lich shows up and you're like, it can dominate my mind. I'm leaving. So it's the misconception that you need that just because you're immune to fear, you have to be the whole I'm never gonna run, I'm never gonna flee, I'm always gonna 100% stand my ground, and I'm going to 100% always want to fight it because I'm fearless. Fear has no hold of me. It's like you can say that, but then your character's gonna get messed up. Uh, it's like I'm teaching someone how to play, and I was running through a combat scenario, and they didn't fully really like the fact that the boar they were fighting was tanky. It was beefy.
Fight a boar.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
going to stop.
I was using it as an example because it's not the weakest, but it's also not the strongest. So it's like,
And it's
yeah,
not going to stop.
yeah, it's not gonna stop though. It reaches neg 10. Did they get it to neg 10? Yes. But I was like using that example because it does have a decent hit as a +4. It does do a die 8 +3. So it can mess you up. It can do a lot. Does it have almost 30 hit points? Yes. It has like an AC 15. So it has that sweet number that certain people hate. Hi.
Yes.
Um so even though it was a fighter and a bard, the fighter wasn't having too much problems because they actually have a +4 to swinging, but because they got hit and almost one shot because they're both level one, there's like, yay, 12 hit points, boom, I'm now down to 2. They switched to fighting defensively, which made them slightly harder hit, which if they didn't, the board would have got a second confirmed hit in and dropped them. But the other person playing the board wasn't fully comfortable with the fact that they had a +0 to hit. And if it wasn't for certain suggestions, they wouldn't have gotten a flanking bonus. They weren't happy that their weapon only does a die 6 of damage. It's like you have an 11 strength. You're not going to hit every single hit, even if you had a high strength. But it's like bards don't have a strong attack bonus. Your strength is average, so you're swinging as an average Joe. Yeah, you have some other
They
good
don't even,
statistics, but you're
they're
swinging.
also first level.
Yeah, it's like your first level, so you're not going to be hitting every single attack. That's part of the challenge. You're not mid max for physical melee combat. You're a bard. Is the fighter sitting there with a 16 strength? Yeah. Are they using a cutlass? Yes. Could have picked a slightly more damaging weapon? Yes, but no, they wanted a cutlass because their background's a merchant marine. So they're going to use a sailor's weapon, which is a cutlass. Uh, did they eventually actually win? Yes. But the only time the bard actually hit was when the bard actually managed to pull off a confirmed critical and did 6 damage total. So it's like, that's a decent amount of damage for someone with the 11th strength.
Yes.
But the rest of the damage, because they needed to do a total of 38 damage total to it, the other 22 points of damage came from the fighter. So they got real lucky because the last hit did just enough damage to put it to neg 10 because they got it to exactly neg 10, so they didn't have to deal with the whole like, oh, it has this feature, so it gets to keep going until it hits neg 10. They didn't have to put up with that because that last hit actually did it. But did they underestimate it? Yeah, they thought it's a bowler. We're not gonna it's not gonna beat us up. It's like it's a CR2 two monster. Well, monster. It's a CR2 monstrosity that can and will make you regret your life decisions. It's a high strength monster because again, I think it's 16 strength. So it's a high strength monster. It's a physical monster, so all of its crap is like, mm. And their biggest problem was there to hit. Which, if they were a halfling, they would have had an easier time with that entire combat because A, +1 for being small sized. B, they most likely would have just struck the ranged combat and would have overplayed high decks, and most likely used a sling. So yeah, a deck it's like a die 4 damage. Yay. Mm. But when you're getting at minimum a +3 to hit, and again that's counting an average deck score, the +1 they get for slings and the +1 they get for small size. That's a decent at level 1 bonus right there.
They just need to
Because,
make sure they have 38 rocks.
well, because it's technically the ammunition, I believe, is listed as pretty much there's you can use tiny tiny rocks, or the actual bullets they use because the bullets assisted for it are pieces of metal, so they're actually like
There are
hitting
a
you
lot of them.
something hard. So yeah, you can pick up a bunch of rocks. Uh, I don't adjust the damage for picking up a bunch of random rocks because I'm not that cruel. Because not all rocks are created evenly, and technically speaking, they're they're not aerodynamic. So
No.
technically, at minimum, if you use rocks, you're getting like at minimum -1 for using rocks. While the bullet thing's there because it's pretty much you're taking marbles and you're shooting them. That's technically aerodynamic. Not the most aerodynamic thing in the world, but it's the right shape to probably be flung out of the sling, and it's the right shape to not have air actually be a huge problem with it. Because when it comes to round shaped objects, it's more like the bigger it is, usually the problems occur. That's why cannonballs can sometimes start to veer off and not hit their target after you leave this certain kill zone for it. But halflings can make very excellent range combatants while it's using a sling or throwing things. Does they can take daggers and throw a bunch of daggers, or my personal favorite, javelins. I love javelins. They make good melee weapons and good flowing weapons. Even if you're like a halfling who's doing the die 4 version of it, it's a die 4 small size weapon, which is generally good because a lot of the other weapons become uh Make it die 3. So it's like, here's good. You can stab with it. If you need to, throw it. So it ends up panning out to be quite excellent for switching to from like I'm throwing stuff to I have to engage in combat. Now I'm going to stab you with it. And if you take weapon finesse with it, it means all your attacks, both melee and range, are now using your dexterity. And even though you're not getting the +1 for throwing it, does the +1 only really comes into play if the weapon goes airborne. You still get to use your high strength to hit. So halflings can easily be built and designed
Strength or
for
dex?
a. Well, if you're using weapon finesse, you're using dex to hit, but strength still applies for damage.
Right, but
And
you
throw.
just said high strength to hit.
Did I?
Yes.
I played with the chainsaw. Um,
Okay.
no, but they can still rely on the high dexterity for their hitting on both aspects. Because even though strength does get applied to thrown weapons, does the damage you still use your strength to modify the damage you deal for throwing it. A race that takes a hit to strength but a bonus to dex, weapon finesse becomes your best friend. It it can save a life because you're taking your high dex score, well, your high dex modifier, and you're replacing your low strength modifier for your accuracy, which, going back to it, because we're going to beat a dead horse here. Hitting is always better than doing lots of damage. Does like I've said to plenty of people in the past, I don't care if you have a great sword. I don't care if you have a base 18 strength and you do +6 damage with your boom. If you can't hit the target, you're not going to do as much damage as this person over here shooting his so-called weak little bow because he's over here doing just outrageous amounts of damage because he's hitting. It's like the big differences between um a fighter gone range versus a fighter gone melee is, besides the fact that he can start attacking the target before the melee fighters, is there's so many feats, so many things that the range that the archer can go into to just get him not only slightly better to hit, but more attacks. Because that's also a. And a shirtless man just walked behind you. You caught that a wee bit too late.
Yeah, well,
Hey, it's a free show. We might get some viewers because of that. Show
no,
me the
not at
money.
all. Otherwise, got stuff like you.
Um, but no, it's like not only having a high to hit, if you can do something to increase the amount of attacks you get, that's also really good. That's one of the reasons why speed, this enchantment for speed is. I don't know why your camera doesn't want to work right now. But that's why the enchantment speed is probably one of the best enchantments out there because as part of a full round of attack, you can do lots of attacks. So even also going back to more about halflings and less about random other statistics. Um, Despite people saying small creatures aren't good, halflings is probably up there with top. I would put them like in the top tier. There's probably like a few other small races that I would put above them, but they're definitely top tier as one of my favorite small races because of what they do get. Because people do forget that just because something's small doesn't mean it's terrible. Does not mean it sucks. Does not mean you shouldn't play it or that it's an unplayable thing. It has things that benefit you. Like the stealth capabilities of a halfling, I love because if I'm going to play a rogue, I want to. This can sound like a power gamer munchenizer, but if I'm going to go rogue, I want to play something that gives me lots of benefits for being a rogue. So a halfling makes perfect sense for a rogue, not just because it's favorite class, but because the bonuses it has to the stealth abilities. The +4 on hide checks, +2 on stealth checks is really, really good. The bonus to jump and climb checks, I love that. Climb checks are slightly difficult and can cause your character to die if you fall from too high. Jump checks are always BS. You can account for how much BS a jump check can give you. So having a immediately +2 to it does help, even though the lower strength score does hinder it a bit. Having a countermeasure is always great because yes, climb and jump are affected by strength, but the +2 outweighs the +2 to those die rolls outweigh the minus to
Back.
strength.
Sorry about the distraction, folks.
Yes, we're not running a free show here, so
Pay up.
pay up. Remember, if you want to make it rain, we do prefer it be and at least $10 bills that are raining on him.
Yes.
Not ones, tens. We would appreciate a
Tens.
couple one
Don't do any.
hundreds, but nothing lower than a 10, please. Fives if you have to, but please, no ones, just higher numbers. Um, but like I said, even though they have that hit to strength, that bonus counteracts any negative that strength would have. Then you have the bonus deletion checks. Whether or not you have a good wisdom or not, whether or not you decide to dump points into it, a +2 is still a +2, and that's still really good. Does that means counting an average wisdom and no points, you have a +2 listen right off the bat. The immediate +1 on all saving throws. That's a +1 on all saving throws. That means you don't have to go, do I have a high wisdom or a high dex or a high con? Oh, like say so it's a I have immediately +1 to all
None.
of them.
No, nothing.
Yeah. Uh so that is I love that. And if you happen to run against a fear effect, you get additional +1 against that, which does stack with the other bonuses, but you still sorry, it's not a +1 against fear. It's additional +2 against fear. So even though not counting anything else, you'll have a +1 to fortitude because the action most likely have a +2 reflex and a +1 wisdom. If you happen to run across something that's gonna stick, it's frightful presence. Well, instead of a +1, you have a +3. And again, that's counting average statistics. Like the average, what they give for the stat block here gives them a +4/4, +2 reflex, and a +0 will because they gave them a really terrible will. But if someone would go, I cast fear on you, that +0 jumps to a +2. And if anyone's going to try to say, well, that's not good, it is good. It doesn't matter if it's level 1, which is the main area. When you're at low levels, any bonus is considered a huge benefit. But it doesn't matter if you're level 1 or level 60. A +1 or even a +2 can be the difference between passing or failing any check. While it be swinging a weapon, uh, rolling a skill check, rolling saving throws. It does not matter what it is. Any bonus is a good bonus. That's why they call it a bonus, because it's to your benefit. And because those things stack with a lot of normal things, it's like, for instance, the bonus they get against fear effects stack with the bonus you get from bless. Bless does, it's not whatever's better. It better when it comes to your class. No, no, it stacks with it. Uh, but yeah, there's really nothing wrong with any of the halflings.
You might get
They're
stepped on,
Yeah,
but
yeah, you
nothing
may
wrong
get
with it.
stepped on, but there's nothing wrong with it. Uh, on that note, we can easily wrap this up. Because there's not, thankfully, they don't have a million and one things to go over. Uh, but for those who are watching, thank you for watching and joining us. Uh, for those on you, see
Subscribe.
us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It will help us greatly, and we much appreciate it. Thank you, and good night.